Hello, my name's Kate. I'm one of the librarians at the main library. I work in adult nonfiction. Last week I read a poem about a father, and that caused me to start thinking of poems about mothers, especially about the special relationship that a mother has with her child. When I think of that relationship, the first poem that comes to my mind is The Lanyard by Billy Collins. Billy Collins, of course, is a contemporary American poet, very much alive and well, and he reads The Lanyard perfectly. It's an amusing poem, there's warmth and charm to it, and he's able to draw out all of those qualities while doing a very understated reading of the poem. Another poem I think of when I think of a mother's devotion to her child, it's quite different from The Lanyard. It's the poem The Ballad of the Harp Weaver by Edna St. Vincent Millay. This is a poem that my mother read to me and my siblings when we were young. Unfortunately, this is not a happy memory for me though, because I was afraid of this poem. All anyone had to do was say the first line of the poem, and I would put my hands over my ears and run out of the room. The first line is, "Son," said my mother. So nothing obviously scary there, but I was terrified of this poem. Of course, I forgot about that, and many years passed, and I think I took 2 poetry classes in the course of my studies, and I've always enjoyed poetry, but I never ran into that particular poem. I was actually over 50, I think, when I wondered, what was that poem that scared me so much when I was a kid? All I could remember was that first line. So I typed "son," says my mother, into Google, and the poem comes up right away. It's actually a rather famous poem. The first thing I noticed was that it was by Edna St. Vincent Millay, a highly regarded poet, quite well known. And the second thing I noticed about it, once I read the poem, is it's not actually scary. It is sad though. And this has become one of my favorite poems. I actually love this poem now and was tempted to read it here, but I think it's just a little bit too sad for right now. And I can't read it without sort of getting tears in my eyes or my voice breaking. It's that sad. So I chose a poem that has a nice magical touch, but it's not scary at all. It's certainly not sad. It's not funny either, but I think it does capture the tenderness and love between a mother and a child. And it actually could relate to a father as well. The poem is called "To a Child," and it's by Sophie Jewett. And that title, "To a Child," not to any particular child, is interesting in that Sophie Jewett herself didn't have any children. There's no record of her having been married or having any children. She was born in 1861 in the Finger Lakes area of New York. Her mother died when she was 7. Her father died when she was 9. She went to live with an uncle and a grandmother, and they both passed away before she reached adulthood. She did have a close relationship with her minister and with the minister's daughter, who was her age. So perhaps it was those friendships that sustained her after enduring all of those losses. She published 2 volumes of poetry in her lifetime. Apparently she was rather critical of her own work, and she published under her own name, Sophie Jewett, as well as her mother's name and her mother's maiden name, which would have been Ellen Burroughs. One of her accomplishments was translating a long and rather important poem that was written in Middle English, and she translated it to modern English. She spent the last 10 years of her life as a professor teaching English at Wellesley College. She died in 1909. They just said after a brief illness, so I don't know what happened to her, but she died in 1909, and that good friend of hers, the minister's daughter, compiled her works and released a 3rd volume of Sophie Jewett's poetry in 1910. So here's the poem "To a Child" by Sophie Jewett. The leaves talked in the twilight, dear. Hearken the tale they told. How in some far-off place and year, before the world grew old, I was a dreaming forest tree. You were a wild, sweet bird, who sheltered at the heart of me, because the north wind stirred. How when the chiding gale was still, when peace fell soft on fear, you stayed one golden hour to fill my dream with singing, dear. Tonight the self-same songs are sung, the first green forest heard. My heart and the gray world grow young to shelter you, my bird. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you soon.